What did the cake say to the fork?
What?
You want a piece of me?
Them are fine words.
Hungry Squared, bringing you the best food talk anywhere.
Welcome to the Hungry Squared podcast where the brain and belly meet. I'm Sharon from the Wasatch Cooking Guide.
And I'm Winter from theredparty.com. This week, we are talking about biological leaveners, part 2. Actually, just leaveners, part 2.
Yeast. We're talking about yeast.
Yeast, specifically. Let's talk about it. Hey, Sharon. How has your week been? Did you eat anything fun this week?
I did. Well, it wasn't like super exciting fun, but it was good.
Okay. What did you have?
I made some Thai chicken.
Ooh.
And basically it was like chicken that was slightly breaded in like a coconut milk based, kind of like a curry sauce. I was just excited about it because I found the recipe online on Cooking Light.
Yeah.
The same day that I made it, basically like 2 hours
sweet.
before I
so
made
you
it.
were like, this looks good. I'm going to make it. And you executed it.
Yeah. And it worked perfectly. It was on a weeknight when I don't have very much time to cook. And
Yeah.
everybody liked it. So it was a big win.
You're going to keep it.
Yeah. I was excited.
Well, really quickly, what did you bread it in?
So I didn't really bread it because it's Cooking Light. So you put some cornstarch on the chicken.
I think that does.
So it kind
not
of
bad.
gives it a little bit of a kind of a crust, if you will. So when you saute it in the pan.
Yeah, we do that with
crusts
a lemon caper chicken.
Oh yeah, yum.
And that turns out really, really nice too.
Nice.
Coincidentally, it's a Weight Watchers
recipe.
Nice. And that one's really good.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What did you eat this week?
So I had. Oh, so you know how I've made a goal to make something in the Instant Pot?
Yes.
Like every week. So this week, I was hailing back to my childhood, and I was like, that would be super duper good in the Instant Pot. And it's something called shoyu chicken. So it's soy sauce chicken, basically.
Shoyu chicken?
Yeah, that's just the way you say soy sauce.
Oh,
so
okay.
I was looking around for something like that for the Instant Pot because I just don't know time still. I'm still working out times and pressures and like how to finish things off just right. And so I found something on pressurecookrecipes.com. It's this lovely couple that do beautiful work, and they do pressure cooking stuff, pretty much all pressure cooking stuff.
What's the website?
pressurecookrecipes.com.
Oh,
and their Instagram is lovely. Like,
nice.
It's lovely. Go follow them. Anyway, so I didn't find a shoyu chicken recipe per se. I found a teriyaki chicken and basically had all the same stuff that is in that. It's basically a teriyaki chicken, but Chinese version. It was awesome.
Really?
Yeah, it turned out really awesome because you have to start out first with you marinate your chicken for a little bit, 20 minutes, I want to say, and then you go ahead and put the saute function on and put your...
Oh, that's right, because you can saute.
You can saute. So you just put... I think I sauteed it with the marinade in there with some garlic. So you just dump out the marinade in there, put some garlic and some ginger, just kind of get some of the flavor. And then you put your chicken down in there. And it was like 6 minutes.
6 minutes?
6 minutes. I think I'll probably do 7 minutes because I had really large chicken breasts and I want to make sure.
For the whole shebang.
Yeah.
It took that long.
Well, 6 minutes to do the cooking portion. So we had to get up to pressure. So that took
How
a few
long does
minutes.
it take to get up to pressure?
I would say it took about 4 minutes.
Oh, okay.
4 or 5 minutes.
So you're not talking about like any significant time.
No. And then I did do a natural release, which means just letting the little, I don't even know what that thing is called.
The little steamery whistle thing. It's not really a whistle.
It just plops down. So that took about 10 minutes, but that was fine because I had to do a couple of other things. I wanted to make some vegetables. Yeah, I was making some vegetables, roasting them. So, but the nice thing about this one was you finish it off in the oven. So you pull out the chicken thighs, and it's chicken thighs with bone in, because that's the way I roll.
I like that because they're tastier. I think
some people don't like bone in; they don't like thighs. I'm all about them. I think they're tastier. So you take them out and you put them onto a rack, and then you finish them for like 5 minutes, 5-6 minutes in the oven. under broil, and
okay.
crisps up the skin. So there is skin on it as well.
Yum.
It was really good.
That sounds really good.
And the sauce was super good. So you thicken up the sauce and...
Do you put the sauce on the chicken in the oven?
Yeah. So you thicken up the sauce really quickly and brush some of that thickened sauce onto the breasts. The chicken thighs. Stick them in, finish them off. And then we use the sauce to like put on the chicken afterward as well as on our rice.
Nice.
It was really good.
Yum.
I'll put the link in the show notes. It was a winner. I'm going to use that one again.
And now for the main course.
All right. Now for the topic at hand, yeast.
AKA one of our biological leaveners. Are you making a farting noise?
I am. Have
That's
you seen
totally awkward.
Alton Brown's yeast puppets?
No.
People, Google Alton Brown yeast puppets.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
It's amazing.
Okay.
So on his Serious Eat show, he had the yeast puppets.
Mm-hmm.
And they are super cute. And they laugh and make fart noises. And that's all they do.
That's fine.
Because that's kind of what yeast does.
They just laugh and fart?
Well, they mostly just make fart noises. Yeast. So...
Exactly.
And when you go to Alton Brown's show, well, the last show that he did, he has a new show that's touring right now. I think it's a little
stage
different.
show.
Yeah,
right?
his stage show. He has the yeast puppets there too, and they're highly entertaining.
I think we should make some yeast puppets.
Yeah, I got an apron when I went to the show.
Oh,
2 years ago, and it's got the yeast puppets on it.
Nice.
It's pretty fun.
Okay, so we're talking about yeast though today.
Yes. Yeast. What is yeast? It's a biological leavener.
It is.
It's a one-celled fungus.
Indeed it is.
So the fart noises with the yeast, basically, I'm going to break that down very scientifically.
Okay, please do.
Because that's my jam. Just kidding. So the yeast feeds on carbs like sugar, and it converts it to alcohol and CO2, carbon
I was going to say,
dioxide.
I feast on the carbs and the
which
sugars.
Equals farts or fermentation.
Fermentation. I feel like that was pretty well broken down.
Yeah. So there you go. So yeast has been around for a long time, but where does it come from?
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So for my references today are coming from On Food and Cooking by Harold McGee.
He's the guy. He's the man when it comes to food science.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's got a James Beard Award-winning book, which I am holding in my hand right now.
Yes.
And also my other reference is from On Baking, which is a textbook from Culinary Art Institute.
Oh, okay.
Sarah Lubinsky, Priscilla Martell, and Eddie Van Dam are the editors of that.
Excellent.
Anyway, so Harold McGee talks about yeast in his book, and he says that for much of human history, yeast was simply recruited from grain surface.
Yeah.
Or it was supplied by an earlier piece of dough.
Mm-hmm.
Or
a starter.
Right.
For example.
Or obtained from the surface of beer brewing vat.
Yeah, I saw that.
And today, the strains are specifically selected for bread making are grown on molasses in industrial fermentation tanks.
Oh.
And that's what gives the different commercial brands.
So
their different types of, I guess, yeast flavors.
So these yeasts are considered like a domestic yeast. These are commercially available, manufactured widely.
Yes. And they're all basically the same strain, which, let's see, there's more than 100 different species of yeast.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of them, yes.
Some cause infection, some cause food spoilage. But this one species in particular is, and I'm going to butcher the Latin, even though I took Latin. It's Saccharomyces cerevisiae.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It probably isn't. But, I mean, that's the words. My pronunciation's probably terrible. Anyway, so that's mostly the yeast that you're getting today when you go to the grocery store and you buy yeast. And you're buying different forms of baker's yeast because that's the most common.
Right.
And there's 3 types
Of baker's yeast.
of baker's yeast, which is not to be mistaken for something called brewer's yeast. Brewer's yeast is actually a nutritional supplement and it does not leaven anything.
Wait, what is brewer's yeast then?
It's just a nutritional supplement.
That's it.
Mhm.
Okay. It's just called brewer's yeast.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's
not a yeast. And that's not the yeast we're talking
a
about.
leavening agent. Okay. Okay. So tell me the 3, break it down. Let's break it down.
Let's break it down. We've got our cake or compressed yeast, and that's a moist block of fresh yeast cells directly from a fermentation vat.
So they scrape it down and make it into a cake,
Yeah.
basically?
Yeah, a cake block.
Yeah, I think I've seen them. I've never used them before.
I've never seen them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just the description kind of
Grosses you out.
a moist block of yeast. And I'm one of those people that doesn't like the word moist. And then when you...
I think there's a club for that. There's a Facebook group for that.
Of this single-celled fungi that is moist. Anyway, so it's directly from the fermentation vat and it's perishable. It has to be kept refrigerated, but it does have a very short shelf life of 1 to 2 weeks.
Oh.
So you could sell it, I guess, on a shelf that's non-refrigerated, but it needs to be refrigerated pretty quickly.
Okay.
The most common kind, the kind that I use whenever I use yeast, is active dry yeast. It was introduced in the 1920s. It's removed from a fermentation tank and it's dried into granules that have a protective coating of yeast debris. And you activate this yeast by soaking it in warm water. And a word about the soaking temperatures is that yeast is sensitive to temperature and it's sensitive to moisture. So it prefers temps about 75 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
If it goes above 138 degrees, it dies. And if it goes below, and this is Fahrenheit.
Right.
If it goes below 34 degrees, it goes dormant.
So it's just not going to do anything.
Right.
So
I have a little bit of a
70s
temperature chart.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's pretty lukewarm.
Yeah.
Ish.
So if you're at 34 degrees Fahrenheit, your yeast will be inactive. 60 to 70 degrees, you're going to have slow action with your yeast. 75 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit is the best temperature for yeast activity. 85 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit is the best water temperature for hydrating instant yeast. 100 degrees to 110 degrees is the best water temperature for hydrating active dry yeast.
Which is what?
So a little bit warmer.
Okay.
Yeah. And if it gets up to 138 degrees,
then it's
the
gone.
yeast dies.
So the temperature for the active dry yeast, why is it a little higher? Is it a different strain? Or is it just the way it has been processed?
It's the way that it's been processed.
Oh, really?
And dried.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it needs a little more heat, and and you mentioned that it changes according to temperature and moisture.
Yeah. So
water, I guess.
Yeah. So humidity also affects the yeast, that kind of thing. In the South, we kind of had trouble with yeast. Like you would just buy yeast as needed, keeping it in your kitchen.
Because it could easily
activate
while it was just
and so by the time you need it, then
it's dead.
Yeah.
Or it's already done its thing.
And this was something interesting that I was like, oh, this is why I always have a problem with yeast. So with the active dry yeast, if you soak it in a cooler temperature water, the yeast cells recover very poorly and they'll release substances that actually will inhibit the gluten formation.
Oh.
In your breads.
So that's why you really could have a flop when it comes to your bread. So you do need to make sure your temperature's good. Quick question, side note. So when I was a kid, I tried making bread. I really, really didn't do well because I think I killed the yeast. Either it was too hot and I killed it off, or it wasn't warm enough. And it just was not doing its thing. And I always just got discs of bread instead of loaves of bread. Yes. And so how do you test your temperature? Do you actually pull out a thermometer?
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
Mm-mm.
How do you usually?
Just all for feel? The best.
Is it just all by feel?
I feel it. I mean, you can stick, because if you think about it, a hot tub is this is about hot tub water that you want, right?
So, okay.
Like pretty warm.
Mm-hmm. For active dry yeast.
Right. For the instant dry yeast, that's not as, the water doesn't have to be as hot. So the instant dry yeast was introduced in the 70s. It dried more quickly than the active yeast.
During the process, during manufacturing process.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's in the form of small porous rods that actually take up water more rapidly than the granules. And they also produce the CO2 more vigorously than active dry yeast.
Oh.
So that's something interesting too.
Now that you say that it's in these rods, you're right. I've never noticed that they're in these rods for the instant dry yeast.
So I've seen the instant dry yeast. I just get the active dry.
But the instant dry yeast, the fact that they've created it so it's porous, there's more surface area. Yep. And then the rods. Oh, that's just very interesting. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So salt also inhibits yeast growth. And so that's why we use it in baking, to control the rise of your dough.
Yeah, because
it doesn't get out of control.
It totally can get out of control, because I've done that too.
Too much sugar can also inhibit the growth of yeast. So the yeast feeds on sugar, but if you give it too much, it kind of kills it as well too.
It's basically sluggish because it's eaten too much.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Thanksgiving for the yeast.
Oh.
It's like, whoa, don't ask me to do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Those are 3 kinds of yeasts for our one-celled fungus moist friends.
So you do prefer the active dry yeast?
It's just what's readily available, it seems like, when I go to the store. So I'm not much of a bread maker. I'll just put that out there. And this is because, I have killed my yeast, or I've messed it up by using too cool of water.
Yep.
And there's been some times where my yeast has gotten too hot, and it takes 138 degrees, like it was saying. It gets too hot and it dies. And the dead yeast is such a disappointment, because by the time you've got all your stuff, it's a little bit of a production to be using the yeast for me.
It really is.
And so I'm like, oh, and it's dead. It's not doing anything. So yeah, I don't know. I buy yeast as needed, and it's usually in those little packets.
Yep.
So that's what it is.
There you go.
But I only buy it if I'm going to make something that day or that week. I don't buy it more than a week out.
I think it's your southern roots.
Probably.
Because it is dry here, friend.
Well, but I've also had, as we've spoken before offline, the exploding banana incident in my kitchen because it got so dang hot.
Yeah, that's true. There are things that happen to Sharon. That's why she hasn't purchased an Instant Pot, people.
Yeah.
She's worried that it's going to blow up.
Orange juice concentrate explode and a banana. The orange juice concentrate was totally my fault. My best friend Julianne can verify. But the bananas, not my fault. But they exploded. I have experienced exploding things without hardware, without any technology involved, just being me. So I'm a little hesitant.
Hence the reason why you don't buy yeast unless you're doing something day of.
Nope. That is a last minute purchase for me.
That's pretty funny, Sharon. And pretty paranoid. I'm just saying.
Hey, that's how I roll.
Paranoid.
With the yeast. You have to be very careful with these things.
You do. You do.
So that's your domestic yeast.
The stuff that we can buy at the store.
Yeah, but I've heard that there's such a thing as wild yeast.
There is. Okay.
But I don't know what that is.
So I took a class, and it was a sourdough bread baking class through my
sourdough bread
from my continuing education called Lifelong Learning here at the University of Utah. And I loved it. It's just a couple that teaches this, and they've been just making artisan bread forever.
Nice.
And they do such a lovely job at it. And I was blown away because I thought sourdough was, you could only get it in San Francisco. Like, this is how totally ignorant I was.
You could only get it in San Francisco.
Well, not like get the true sourdough bread in San Francisco. And I took this class and I was like, I can make my own starter? What are you talking about, people? You should have seen. I was dumbfounded.
Super excited.
Yeah, I was super excited. And I was like, shut the front door. I just couldn't believe it. It was pretty funny. So, okay. So wild yeasts, you mentioned a little of the history of how wild yeast came to be. There's not really, you can't pinpoint a time, right? When yeast came into existence. It's probably been...
People have been baking like leavened breads for thousands literally
of years.
Thousands and thousands of years.
And like you mentioned, it's likely these yeasts are found on the outside of wheat hulls, and it gets incorporated into bread. They also, like you said, the inside of beer right, barrels, they would scrape that out. They also talk about how these yeasts are naturally found on the outside of grapes. And so,
is that like the white coating?
The white coating, it's part of that white coating. So
that's yeast.
Yeah. And it's not all yeast. I think there's other things on it, but yeast have been found in that kind of white coating on grapes. There is quite a long history of where it's come from. Now, originally, they didn't know why things were happening. So if you will recall to our episode with Cristiano Cremonelli, he talks about they didn't know why the meat was lasting longer when it was being stored next to the cheese, right?
Right.
But it's kind of the same thing with the bread. They're like, it's rising. That tastes good. We're going to eat it.
Right.
Kind of a thing. So wild yeast is, so you mentioned Saccharomyces cerevisiae, I think, is the one that is generally the domestic type of yeast. So wild yeast can have there's a lot of different strains that can be there, but they kind of talk about how Saccharomyces exiguus, I don't know how to say that, EXIGUUS. There's 2 U's in a row, so I don't know how to say that. So it's a different strain than the stuff that is commercially available, commercially packaged and made. And this particular yeast, it's wild because it's basically all around us. It's on plants, it's in the air, it's on fruits, it's on grains, and it's naturally present on flour. So, and it just actually happens when you incorporate your flour and your water together. So this obviously is a leavening agent, just like our Cerevisiae type, and it does the same exact function, that it also produces the alcohol, which we want in this, and carbon dioxide as a byproduct, right? However, a lot of times, so there's that. So you can have just the wild yeast starter, but a lot of times the wild yeast has a buddy.
It has a friend?
It does have a friend. And
what's his friend's name?
The friend's name is a bacteria called lactobacillus.
Oh.
And you've heard of lactobacillus because it's in yogurt. It's in a lot of the cheeses.
Cultures or whatever that you want.
And that's the lactobacillus that was used in the fermentation of the salami that we talked about with Cristiano. So lactobacillus, when it does its thing, when it eats the sugars and breaks down sugars, then it produces a couple of different things. It produces first acetic acid and lactic acid.
Oh, okay.
So 2 different acids there. Kind of the thing that makes them fun buddies together is that seriously, Cristiano basically talked all about this already, but the lactobacillus, it creates these 2 acids, but once these acids are created, then the pH takes a dive.
Right.
Goes down to 3, 3.8, 4, kind of in that area. Not great for a lot of microorganisms to survive. Mm-hmm. But this wild yeast does. In fact, it loves it. It does. It's pretty hardy, and it will continue doing what it does. And so that's why they can kind of coexist together, and they kind of help each other out.
Okay.
One thing like I said, I took this class and we ended up creating a starter. So I don't know if you realize this, but you can create your own wild yeast starter.
So like a sourdough starter.
Like a sourdough starter. Yeah. because I will just basically tell you it's easier than easy.
What?
I know. You would, once again, I was blown away.
How long do these starters last for?
Forever if you feed it.
Interesting. So then it is true, possibly, there's a bakery in France that claims to have the same starter, that they've been using the same starter since Napoleonic times.
Yes. Okay. So we're gonna talk about that. Let's talk about making a starter, and you'll see the process.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about that bakery in France, and maybe, San Francisco sourdough, because that has a long history as well, right?
Yeah.
Not as long as maybe the French bakery, but whatever.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to create your own mother starter, and I'm going to so this is according to Peter Reinhardt, and he's basically the baking guru, the artist and baking guru. He has done a few books. The one I'm referencing is, I believe, The Bread Baker's Apprentice. Yeah, it's The Bread Baker's Apprentice. And so you can, on day one, so in order to make a wild yeast culture, you are going to start with a kind of it's not 1-to-1 weight, but it's 4 tablespoons of whole wheat flour to 4 tablespoons of filtered room temperature water.
So flour and water.
Basically.
That's your starter?
But that's it. It's considered 1-to-1 weight. Well, it's like 100% hydration. So it ends up being about 30 grams of flour to 60 grams of water, because obviously water is more dense and weighs a little bit more. So you mix all those ingredients into a bowl, and you take a fork and whisk it together so it's hydrated. Everything is wet. And you cover it loosely, leave it at room temperature for about a couple of days, I'd say.
What are you covering it with?
I'd say just
plastic wrap.
Plastic wrap. I think you can put one of your little, if it has a little lid to it, just don't close it.
Oh, sure. So put in like some Tupperware and just set the lid on it.
Yeah, I think I actually used just the saran wrap because it was just easy, because I could get to it pretty easily. So then for every single day, you are going to aerate the culture. So you've created a culture. You're going to aerate it. You want to start. So you lift the lid off, or whatever you're covering it with, and you kind of whisk it 3 times a day, like whisk it for like a minute, and use a wet fork.
Okay.
And you're not going to see any signs of fermentation at all within the first 24 hours. But maybe by the second day, you're going to start seeing little bubbles.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. And then, so you're going to do
just from the flour and the water.
Just from that. But once again, the flour from the wheat probably has some of this wild yeast on it.
Okay.
I mean, it's not complete when they harvest it.
That's how it's
doing its thing.
Okay.
Now it's in an environment that it has, like we talked about before, was that it has some food, right? It's got the flour, and then it's got moisture. And if you keep it at a nice ideal temperature in the room of 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, then it's happy-ish.
Okay. So you're not refrigerating it?
Nope. Just out on the counter.
Okay.
Now, right now, it is rather cold outside here in Utah.
Yep.
So it kind of is a little cold in our house right now. So you might...
Does it go dormant?
It's just not going to be... Yeah, it won't be able to have its party.
Okay.
If it's a little too cold. So if your house is, warmish, then great. If you've got a window, sure, put it next to the window, where if it's you've got some sunlight coming in, that type of thing.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then on day 3, you are going to add some new ingredients to that culture, which are a little bit more flour and a little bit more water. So 2 tablespoons of water, 2 tablespoons of flour. And you're going to whisk it. Once again, hydrating it, covering it, aerating it. Bubbles should start growing now in the next 48 hours. Do it the same thing, aerate it. Then day 5, same thing. You're going to keep adding a little bit more. And I've got different ratios. I'll put some information in the show notes on how to do this. But you just keep doing this. And it's going to start having more bubbles. And it's going to start having that yeasty aroma, kind of fruity, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Within the next 48 hours. Okay, then when you get to day 7, you are going to chuck out half of your culture mixture.
What?
Yep.
You're going to throw it away?
Throw it away. You don't need it. down the drain. It's totally fine. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. It will be fine, Sharon.
Okay. Okay.
Then you're going to add
All that
some
work.
new ingredients because once again, you are at a certain point, you need to kind of turn it over. And so you throw away half of it and then you're going to add a little bit more because you need
A little bit more new flour, a little bit more new water.
Exactly.
Okay.
And once again, leave it at room temperature, let it go bubbly, foamy. It'll start doing its thing because once again, you're adding more love to it, more water, more food. Once you are letting it sit there for another, day or two, you've got a pretty decent active wild yeast culture.
Wow.
That's it. And then you can cover it and just put it in the refrigerator because then you're basically putting it into a dormant state when it's in the refrigerator.
Oh, okay.
When you want to reactivate it, then you
take it out.
You take it out. And depending on when you did it, a lot of times you actually take out half of it, throw it away, feed it and let it sit for 8 hours. And then you can start whatever you're doing.
Oh,
so that it's like on its peak. You want it to be peaking on how much it's producing.
Okay.
Bubbles and that type of thing. So that it can, when you actually put it into your starter, into an actual bread,
active bubbling.
It's ready to go. You need to catch it at their cycle of eating and creating all their byproducts. So,
okay.
And so right now I purchased a sourdough starter from King Arthur.
You purchased a sourdough starter.
Yeah.
You didn't make your own.
No, I didn't. Way back when. This was before I did this class.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I purchased that. Okay. And I did what they told me to do, kind of, fed it and did this, let it sit out. And it basically was the same process. And that was 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So
one thing that was really surprising to me was when my teachers said, there's a lot of times that your wild yeast will be a kind of a Utah yeast. It's like, even though you buy a San Francisco,
it becomes a local yeast.
Yeah, because it takes on whatever is in the air.
Oh.
What is in our area. And that may be the wild yeast that is
native to your region.
Area. So even though I may have purchased a starter yeast from, say, King Arthur, or heck, if I went
to East Coast or something.
Yeah, if I went to San Francisco and purchased one, eventually, by the time it gets turned over so many times, it's going to have taken on different
qualities from where you're at.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, having said that, when you said, now this bakery in France, right?
Yeah. They've had the same starter since basically the French Revolution.
I think that's possible.
That seems gross and unsanitary.
No. But think about it. It's a living, growing organism, and it's the fermentation process, like we talked about before, where it's perfectly safe because of the drops in pH and killing off different organisms. And if they had if I purchased something, if they gave me some of their starter and brought it here, and started using it, I don't think after a while it's going to taste the same as the one in France.
Okay. I'm still thinking about this from a germaphobe perspective.
What? You're using fungus to create this process and bacteria.
Sure. How
and they're
old
good.
Is this fungus and bacteria?
No, that's fine. Think about it. Those yeast cells and those bacteria, they probably have they've divided and they've budded off and they're just creating new things and getting replaced. And
that's true.
So
it's really not that old.
It's
probably.
just the circle of life, the circle of yeast and bacteria life, right? I
think they had to call the song "The Circle of Life" because the circle of yeast didn't sound as good.
No. The circle of yeast. Okay, one last thing I wanted to cover, and this does kind of go back to the sourdough bread in San Francisco, because I love the sourdough bread in San Francisco.
Oh, I do too.
It is super tangy. I know some people don't like super tangy sourdough, but I love it. And
my friend's mom used to mail some to us in Seattle.
Oh.
Every holiday, because
that
the
is awesome.
bakery in San Francisco that she got it from would bake it like in a jack-o'-lantern shape.
What?
Or a tree shape for Christmas. Or a heart.
What?
It was super fun.
I got to figure out what that bakery is so I can go there next time.
I'll have to ask Barbie where it was at.
Well, so one thing to be aware of, I think, and you can also create a tangier sourdough.
Oh, really? How?
Or a more mellow one, depending on your taste.
Okay.
So if you have more of a liquidy starter, and when I say that, it's more of a 1-to-1 ratio, kind of like I talked about when you start your own wild yeast start.
Sure.
So it's a little bit more balanced. Then you're going to create more acetic acid, and that gives it the more distinct, punchy, tangy flavor.
Oh.
While if you have a stiffer starter where you have more flour, so more of a 2-to-1 ratio of flour to water, then that will produce more lactic acid, and that will kind of mellow out. It won't have as much of that.
It's more toned down.
Punch. Yeah. So I think if you are not totally sold on the tangy, punchy sourdough, then yeah, just go a little bit. Start with a stiffer, and I mean, like when you stir it, it's a little harder to stir. It's stiffer to stir.
Doughy.
Yeah, and use that instead. So now there were a couple of guys. They were microbiologists about 34 years ago. Wanted to get to the bottom of the whole San Francisco sourdough.
Okay.
Because that is a hugely. I mean, that it is very well known for this, and they cultivated the yeasts and that bacteria, right? Because we talked about both the yeast and the bacteria. They're buddies, and they do their thing, and they're happy, and they help each other out. So they actually found the two strains of bacteria, the bacteria and the yeast. And so the yeast is Candida milleri, and the bacterium that usually is seen as Lactobacillus, and I love this, Lactobacillus sanfranciscensis.
San Francisco.
Yeah, they totally named. I don't know if they named it.
Oh, they named it after San Francisco.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because the yeast that they found, the C. milleri, doesn't digest maltose, which is a type of sugar.
Okay.
And happily, this strain of Lactobacillus, the San Franciscan,
The San Francisco Bacillus.
No, I don't know how to say it. It can't live without maltose. So the yeast is like, hey, you can have all the maltose because I do not want it. And so the bacteria is like, woohoo, I got all the food I want. And so they definitely are just having a heyday together. Isn't that fun?
Nice.
I love the fact that there's a specific one that is
a specific type
to San Francisco. I just think that's awesome. And I think we should make some here in Utah and call it the Lactobacillus Utah-ni A.
No.
Dang it. Really trying hard to make that work.
Maybe you could call it a Ute Bacillus.
Oh. Okay. I'd be on
Utah is named for the Ute Indian tribe.
Okay.
If y'all didn't know that.
We can figure something out. So I'm just saying that you're going to have a distinct flavor for where you're at because of what's in your area, what's on you.
Kind of like honey.
Yeah.
You know, when you have allergies and they say to eat the local honey and stuff because it's got your local pollens and things and it helps you digest it better.
Yeah.
Or
have you develop a immunity towards it. So
but different areas have different flavors of honey.
Yeah.
So different areas could have different flavors of sourdough.
Yep.
Or
because you have
yeast.
different yeast and different bacteria in a certain area.
Okay.
And I suspect there's stuff even on us. There's stuff on us.
Oh, sure. Like bacteria and organisms that live on your skin.
I think you'd be surprised
your
at
gut
that when you're working with the dough and stuff like that. That's going to add stuff like
extra flavor.
Okay, that sounds really gross, but I think this was super fun to research. Yeasts are really cool.
Yeah.
Single-celled. That's all.
Relative to the mushroom.
Yes, indeed. But it was really, really fun. So has anybody done a wild yeast starter? I want to know. How's it going?
Yeah. Are you doing sourdough starters?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Tell us.
yeah. Our podcast is brought to you by our awesome and food-loving sponsor. So today we are once again talking about once a month meals.
Yay! Once a month meals. I'm excited.
Really am excited because I got a little alert saying, hey, you got a new Instant Pot, right? And I was like, yes, I did.
They've got your number.
How did they know that? And they have a great little menu for the Instant Pot. It's awesome. I'm excited. And the cool thing is, you guys, just to let you know, is that the nice thing about the Instant Pot is that you can throw in anything that's frozen in there. You don't have to thaw it. Just stick it in and start it.
Oh.
Did you know that, Sharon?
No, I didn't. I don't think I knew that.
It's quick.
And Once a Month Meals partners with some really awesome bloggers for their recipes.
Yeah, they have a lot of good stuff.
And cookbook authors such as Kathy Hester.
Yeah, we've chatted with her before.
She has many cookbooks, but she specializes in vegan cooking with an Instant Pot. So they've partnered with her and several other great bloggers for great recipes. So you could do paleo, you can do just anything, any kind of specialized diet, or just full fat,
gluten-free, traditional, paleo. There's everything. So we have partnered with them and we're excited to be an affiliate of Once a Month Meals. And so if you go to the website secure.onceamonthmeals.com/affiliate/hungry squared, if you can enter in hungry 15, hungry 15, you will get 15% off your order, whether it's a monthly subscription
which is $16 a month,
or if you want to go full force and like you're in it, there's a yearly plan
for $170.
Yeah, and then 15% off of that, you guys. It's awesome.
It's a great deal.
And it's not just like, oh, you get some recipes.
No, they give you detailed lists. Mm-hmm. They have algorithms to maximize your efficiency, both at the grocery store and in your cooking, making freezer meals and batch cooking and things like that.
Yeah, they really just are all about making sure helping you get food on the table faster so you can spend time on the things that matter to you the most, like hanging out with your family. Like, that's fun. Go to our show notes and you will see the link there and you can click on that. And once again, enter hungry 15 to get 15% off your order. Thanks again, Once a Month Meals.
Let's have a food fight.
Food fight, food fight, food fight, food fight. It's winter.
This is the section of the show where you can email us your relationship questions relating to food at hungrysquared@gmail.com.
Disclaimer, we are no way professional relationship experts, but you should totally listen to us anyway. If you need professional help, please seek it out.
Food fight, the food fight segment of the show. Here we go.
Okay.
What do you have
this is a good one.
You've got the question, I think, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Dear Hungry Squared, my young adult daughter lives with me and she recently started a paleo diet. I did not.
Oh.
I watch what I eat and exercise regularly, so I didn't feel compelled to join her in her new venture. But when I made dinner the other night, my daughter seemed very put out that I made a quote-unquote non-compliant soup.
Oh.
I asked her beforehand if she has any ideas for dinner, and when she didn't offer any, I went ahead with what I had planned. Do you have any tips for how we can get along going forward that don't involve me going on a diet with her? Sincerely, ain't nobody got time for a diet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, so she said that she's not on the diet. Does she sound like... She just says that she's not on the diet.
Yeah, she's not on the diet. She doesn't feel compelled to be on the diet. Sounds like...
Maybe she's pretty healthy anyway.
Yeah, I mean, she watches what she eats and exercises regularly.
Okay.
So,
ooh.
Well, you could go on the diet with her, but it sounds like you don't want to do that.
No.
But a paleo diet's fairly flexible in that you can eat meats and veggies and fruits.
But that might not be appealing to some people.
It might not be.
And maybe she needs to have her carbs.
Oh, yeah. I need to have my carbs.
Right?
I know some people that work out exclusively so they can eat carbs.
The carbs. Yeah. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
I don't think she needs to go on the same diet, but how can she? I want to say, first of all, good job to her for letting her young adult daughter live in her home.
Yeah.
And she's making food.
Mom.
And she's making food for her too.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's awfully nice. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I think you could probably just sit down and have some real talk, and it probably won't take very long, like 2 minutes. Be like, hey, you get to live here.
Yeah.
So you get to buy your own food.
I know. I was like, because paleo can kind of get expensive if you're really just buying meats and
well, I mean, it's not
veggies.
Exclusively meats and veggies, but you know, I mean, you can have some carbs, like you can have potatoes and things like that. But
I think having a frank conversation is good.
Yeah.
But if she's going to be complaining about a non-compliant meal, then maybe the daughter should be cooking a little bit more.
I think she should be cooking a little bit more. Hopefully she's sharing some costs here.
Yes.
Don't let your adult children freeload if they don't have
seriously.
to. I don't know.
We don't know the situation, but if you can encourage them.
Yeah. No freeloading. But freeloading aside, I think part of it was she asked her daughter for ideas. So it seemed like she was willing to say, hey, is there something you want? Because I'll make it for you.
Right.
And when she didn't have any, I think part of the issue was she went ahead with what she had planned. Yeah. So daughter should probably make a plan. I know that when I've done like the Whole30 and stuff like that, I mean, your success is based on how well you plan.
Well, I was going to say, I think any diet
based on willpower, it's based on planning.
Yeah.
Mostly.
I think any diet is that way. If you're like, oh, I forgot to bring my lunch.
I'm just going to eat a cheeseburger.
Yeah. Because that's what they have at the deli or whatever.
Right.
So
guess it's a milkshake day.
Yeah. Woo-woo! Carbs all the way.
Right. I mean, you have to plan.
Yeah.
So that's kind of on her daughter for not planning.
Yeah.
And mom sounded like she had a plan. She made soup. She said she went ahead with what she had planned already. So maybe work out your meal plans together.
Either work them out, or if she really is set and does not want to eat the food that you are going to make that is non-compliant, then she can make on those nights, she can make her own thing.
Yeah.
I think that's completely fine, because when you're on a diet, sometimes you eat separately from other people. I mean, not separately. You're sitting at the same table, but you're not digging into the pie that's sitting on the table with like everybody else. So I think
some real talk and just say, hey,
you chose
I'm not
this
doing
life.
this. Yes. And you chose it. And I mean, it sounds like she's fairly supportive, because she asked her, hey, do you have any ideas for dinner?
Yeah.
So good for you for being supportive. I would say continue to support. And, you know, if working in some paleo meals at dinner time when you're together, if that works out for you, then that's awesome.
That's great.
If it doesn't, then that's fine too. But I would just say, plan together. And then she needs to make a plan to just cook her own things.
Right.
If that's that big of a deal for her.
There are a lot of great resources out there too
for
paleo recipes. So just have her do a little planning, I think.
Planning and research.
Yeah. And real talk.
Yeah. Because you want to live in a happy household.
Yeah.
Food makes people happy. Everyone should be happy.
Unless you haven't had carbs.
Well, yeah. Then you get hangry. And she probably, if she's getting hangry, might need fat. Just kind of look that up with your paleo research. But that's a thing.
That's a thing. Okay. I think that works.
Yeah.
I think we did it. Maybe.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thanks for joining us today on our show. You can find us at hungrysquared.com on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music.
You guys, if you want to hang out with us on Instagram, it's been kind of fun there.
It is pretty fun there.
So if you just go to Instagram at Hungry Squared, we're there. We're hanging out. We're dishing out the fun food facts, man. It's been pretty
with
fun.
some pretty yummy food photos.
Yeah, that's always fun too. Can't beat that. So thanks you guys for joining us, and we will see you next week for another episode of Food Nerdery.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye.
Hungry Squared, yeah, Hungry Squared.